FSU legend, of course, and played a number of seasons in the NFL. Went to the Giants in the draft. I don't know. I've probably mentioned before, he was drafted by the Brewers right out of high school, chose to go to college, and then got drafted by the Yankees out of college, but chose to play professional football. So two-sport athlete. Danny comes to us courtesy of BetOnline. Check out betonline.ag for updated college football playoff win totals and conference championships and Heisman odds and college football week 1 lines. We have been NFL intensive on today's show, cut down day and just NFL intensive. So I want to talk a little college football here with Danny, and I'll start with Miami and Notre Dame. So does Miami upset them Sunday night at Hard Rock? How do they do it if they do?
First of all, I want to say I'm just glad that we're on Zoom this time. This is the first time we've actually been on camera, and I like to be able to look you guys in the eyes when you insult my alma mater and you take all these pot shots at me, just to kind of see the reactions we get so we can feel like men and we can look each other in the eye.
Now that you say that, I remember last year you spent most of the season taking notes, right? Weren't you taking a lot of notes?
I did. I got a lot of receipts.
What do you have in the
got
trunk
in my
there?
back
All the
pocket.
Notes? You have a trunk full of notes.
I got a tow truck in the back where I had to haul them all in there.
I got a lot of receipts notes from last season.
I got a lot of receipts that I'm going to be pulling. Hopefully I can pull them out this year. It might take a year. I don't know. We'll have to see, but I'm going to save them. I am petty as it gets, and I will remember every one of you guys who called out my Florida State Seminoles for that one. But back to your question at hand about the Hurricanes pulling off this upset. So I think that the way they pull the upset is, first of all, I think it's pretty simple on the defensive side of the ball, and I'm excited to see what Corey Heatherton has planned, the new defensive coordinator, because Jeremiah Love, the running back for Notre Dame, is probably, if he's not the best running back in college football, there aren't many guys that are going to challenge him for that title. He is a dynamic runner of the football for what the Fighting Irish want to do, and they're going to want to lean on him because they're starting a guy in C.J. Carr who hasn't played at all for Notre Dame. And so they've got an inexperienced quarterback playing on the road. Notre Dame's going to want to neutralize the crowd, make the game kind of boring, establish the line of scrimmage. And can Miami, with the revamped defense, can they pressure him, fluster him, shut down that run? That, to me, is the pretty simplest form of the game plan where you don't have to rely too much on the offense as it kind of finds its legs, because I do think Notre Dame's defense is one of the better defenses in the country as well. It's Marcus Freeman, a defensive-minded coach. He's always had it. It's been something they've been able to ride. Last year, they rode it all the way to the championship game. They had a more dynamic quarterback in Riley Leonard who was able to scramble around and make some plays. But defense is going to be pretty physical, and that'll be a big challenge for Miami's offensive line, which is supposed to be their strength. But I do think the best way for them to win the game is to have a defensive standout type of performance that hopefully they get much better play than they did last season.
And Danny, gambling-wise and gameplay-wise, we can talk about it both with this one. I think it's going to be low scoring. Notre Dame, top 5 defense, top 10 in scoring in total. And then last year, Minnesota with Heatherman, they were a top 10 defense in scoring in total. So I'm looking at a 17-13 game. Hawk wants a 47-49 game.
I don't know. 49 and a half. They didn't make it out of nothing.
It's 49 and a half. I don't think they get to 49 and a half.
It's still, there's actually been money coming on the under too, because it was at 50 and a half, not that long ago. And I think smart football minds like me and you, Crowder, we understand what type of game is going to unfold. I think it will be uglier and lower scoring. You've got Carson Beck with who knows who he's throwing to at wide receiver with the amount of production they lost. I think Mario wants to establish the line of scrimmage too, wants to create that run game. And I do think Notre Dame is going to struggle to put up points. So I'm with you, Channing. I do think my favorite play in the game is under the total of that 49 and a half. So I think it's going to be a lower scoring game. That I like better. Like if you're going to bet the Canes, I think it's probably best just to take the money line and just say, you know what, they win the game outright, which wouldn't surprise me. But my favorite play in the game is the under, because I do think it's going to be a lower scoring game where, and we saw that a little bit in week 0, especially the game in Ireland. The first half was really ugly. Nobody tackles anymore in practice. Nobody goes live. So teams are trying to figure out what they're doing offensively. They're kind of not on the same page. You see a lot of drop balls, missed completions. I think it could be an uglier game early, and then they figure things out late. But I think overall it's going to be more of a defensive slugfest.
You mentioned Cam Ward. You mentioned Carson Beck. Can he replicate what Cam Ward did? I'm not saying he's going to be the number 1 overall draft pick, but Crowder, even the last year, he was kind of down on Cam Ward, to be fair, and that didn't necessarily work out great for him. But Crowder just feels like Carson Beck isn't that dude. And I think for the most part, we have high hopes for him down here. I know we have to figure out who exactly his weapons are going to be, and we'll probably find out week 1, 2, and then with that Florida game. But can Carson Beck replicate what he did 2 seasons ago against ACC defenses mostly?
That's the biggest question mark for this team, because Carson Beck a year ago now was a favorite to win the Heisman Trophy. He was projected to be a top 5 pick, and then he goes out and struggles this season, gets hurt, and then kind of rewrite history. And now we are where we are with Carson Beck for the Miami Hurricanes. My big concern, so it's going to look completely different, right? He's a completely different style of quarterback than Cam Ward was. Cam, a little bit more shoots from the hip. He can play from within the pocket, but he had, think of his signature plays when he's rolling around and he's making plays outside the pocket and he's buying time and he sits back there in the pocket and just waits and waits and waits. Carson Beck will be more on rhythm within the system, and he can run too. He is pretty mobile. My thing is kind of what I think Channing feels as well. Cam Ward was a guy that led that locker room. The players wanted to play for him. He had this infectious confidence that I think permeated that locker room. Was why the offense became so unstoppable. It didn't matter if he threw a crazy interception across his body for a pick 6. They still looked at him in that belief. He can bring us back. He's a dog. We can follow this guy. The thing that concerned me about Carson Beck, there's 2 things. One, Georgia let him walk out the door. Georgia can spend with anybody. So if they really wanted Carson Beck, they could have afforded to keep him back. The second thing was the reaction from the locker room, from his own teammates. When he went down, there was almost this excitement of having Gunnar Stockton, of having somebody different under center. And some of the players' comments in that playoff game were we're going to be better off without Carson Beck. And I don't think it meant from a talent perspective. They meant from a leadership perspective. Gunnar Stockton, those players played with more enthusiasm and more excitement than they did with Carson Beck. For whatever reason, he didn't resonate as a true leader in that locker room. And I've even talked to some Georgia people who said he wasn't really missed at all. They weren't upset that he left for any reason. And then he's made some mistakes off the field. I think life is a series of IQ questions, an IQ test. And he's failed some of those, and some of the decisions he made off the field, relationship-wise, getting busted on Snapchat, some stuff that's not very smart. We've all figured out ways to not get caught. And when you do in such a public way, it kind of is an IQ test for me. And so I worry about some of the decisions he made off the field. He is talented. And then all of this, we haven't even talked about him coming back from major elbow surgery. So there's a lot of question marks, but he's still got the talent. And I was talking to Joe Z a couple weeks ago. He was telling me that he's firing lasers out there at practice, which doesn't surprise me. But I will remind you, when he was lighting up defenses in the SEC, he did have Brock Bowers and he had Ladd McConkey, 2 guys that are crushing it now in the NFL. Ladd McConkey much more so than anybody thought. Brock Bowers, we all knew was going to be good, but he had some weapons to work with when he was at Georgia. Somebody's got to emerge in that position for the Canes.
I'm taking notes this time.
Yeah, write them down.
Everything that Danny Kanell just said about Carson
I hope
Beck.
you took the under. I hope you took the under so you
He's
can
up
make
there
some money.
taking that Heisman Trophy and looking around. I'm gonna have a whole page of notes from Danny Kanell here.
We're gonna find out in the first month of the season. I got a ton of heat from some Hurricanes fans. I was asked on my podcast, they were give bold predictions. When I hear that, I'm all right, I start salivating because I'll go bold. I don't care. It's a bold prediction, which I don't think it's going to happen. But my bold prediction was that Miami was going to miss a bowl game this year. And so I had to unfold how it happens.
I mean, what are we
They're not that dissimilar to what Florida
here?
State was last year. Massive expectations. They had all this transfer portal action. The thing that I've realized in the portal world that we live in, when you live in the portal and you ask those guys to do a lot, if you're a front runner, it can work great. But the minute things start to go south, which could be a loss to Notre Dame and potentially a loss to Florida before you have to play Florida State on the road, if they start off slow, you could see a team throw in the towel, much like you saw in Tallahassee. I'm not saying it does happen,
This is
but
my
there
fault,
is a
Hurricanes
recipe.
fans.
There
This
is a
my fault.
recipe
I know who
for
Danny
disaster.
is. I booked him for Canes Notre Dame week. This one's on me. I take all the heat on this. This was not the right forum for Danny Kanell this week. I made a mistake because I was excited this week. There's great college football in the state of Florida with Canes opening against Notre Dame. Your Seminoles open against Alabama.
Yeah.
And Crowder, you've got Long Island University.
Hey, watch out for the Sharks. Watch out for those Sharks. Everybody talks about Florida.
How's Florida going to get past Long Island University?
1-0, baby. 1-0, baby. That's what we do.
Good God. Danny Kanell's with us, by the way, courtesy of Bet Online. That's a big opening weekend for the Canes and FSU. Do you like that? When, Canes, like you say, you could start building a narrative after week one, whether it's fair or not. Notre Dame's a better team. They're higher ranked. Alabama's higher ranked than FSU. Like those are tough games, marquee games, but tough to start a season.
I love it from a fan perspective. I don't think coaches love it. I think everybody would love to start off with a Long Island like the Gators have. Because really, I mean, think about it. I just mentioned how nobody hits in training camp anymore. They shouldn't even call it training camp. They should call it sleepaway camp. Like it's like they go and they have fun. It's a lot of walkthroughs, a lot of like air, like they don't even tackle live anymore. So there's essentially no preseason. So you've got a built-in preseason game for the Gators, which is great. And I would probably prefer that. The good news about it is you do have a massive opportunity. And if you lose, if it's not ugly, now Florida State kind of makes me nervous. If they lose ugly to Alabama, they're a 2-touchdown underdog. You talk about like panic sets in, you lose the fan base, that could happen. But let's say Miami loses close to the point spread. They lose by a field goal. I don't think there's any shame in that. Losing to a team that played for the national title last year, it doesn't kill your resume. You can still accomplish all your goals. And if you win that game, so here's what I'll tell you about Miami that's a good thing. This Miami team kind of reminds me of the Florida State team from 2 years ago. They faced LSU in the first game of the season. It was a huge test, and they won that game. And then they went through and ran the table in the regular season and won it. I do think if Miami beats Notre Dame, they could be that team that is 10 or 11 wins, gets to the ACC championship, reaches all their goals, and kind of carries that huge win through the season, because I think that sort of signature win brings a ton of confidence to the players, the coaching staff, and the fan base. So I think that game could be a huge momentum builder for the Canes.
Hey, Hawk, you say Alabama's ranked higher than Florida State. I think Long Island might be ranked higher than Florida State.
Now we're just throwing haymakers. Hold on. Let me get my piece of paper. Let me write that down.
In the ACC, Clemson is in everybody's top 5. Are they legit? Klubnik and all, like I'm hearing all this stuff. I'm surprised every time I see a different poll and they got Clemson in the top 5.
I'm buying in. I love Dabo Swinney. They've been a perennial contender. Even last year, like when they were cast aside and they lose to South Carolina, they find out a way to come back and win the ACC. And they actually put up a really good fight against Texas in that game. Like they played Texas as good as anybody did, throughout the season last year. They've got the pedigree. Here's my biggest question mark. And this is where, if you wanted to say they're fraudulent, the defense, the reason people are on this team is there's a lot of star power, like first round talent. We hear that all the time on the defensive side of the ball. TJ Parker is supposed to be a first round pick. They've got multiple guys on that side of the ball. They've got Cade Klubnik coming back, who on the back end of the season last year really played well. But all the same guys on that defense that were first round talent, they were there last year and they finished second to last in the ACC in rushing defense. Like, that's a cause for concern. Now, they did make a change at defensive coordinator. They bring in Tom Allen from Penn State. But is scheme all they were missing, or is there some talent up front? And they were 0-3 against the SEC last season, got beat by Georgia, got beat by Texas, and then lost that game against South Carolina. So it does make me a little bit concerned that they didn't play great against the best competition last year, but they've been such a consistent winner. Like, I think that people are just trusting that with the returning talent they've got, they're going to improve. Their schedule's not exactly the hardest schedule in the country, but that LSU game, we're going to learn a lot about Clemson Tigers.
Who's the cream of the crop in the ACC?
Oh, it's Clemson. I do think it's Clemson, but I do think the odds makers, if they're right, it will be a Miami-Clemson matchup, which could be phenomenal. I think people are sleeping on Louisville. Louisville last year went into Clemson and pushed them around. Like, they had a really impressive win. Jeff Brom, their coach, has kind of lived in the portal. He's done a great job with quarterbacks. They got Miller Moss. They got Isaac Brown from Miami, who is probably the best back in the ACC. They're going to run the football. They're pretty physical up front. I think people are sleeping on Louisville. And then there is a wild card up in Tallahassee. You never know what you're going to get. So, I was
giving him some low-hanging fruit to see if he was going to take it, and he took it.
I'm just saying, you never know. They did flip things around a couple years ago. You never know.
Really?
Yeah.
You never know. Really? Danny Kanell.
We've got our 5'9" quarterback running around back there making plays. You never know.
Danny Kanell comes to us today courtesy of BetOnline. Check out betonline.ag. They've got all the updated college football playoff win totals and conference championship odds and Heisman odds and college football week 1 lines. We always enjoy talking to you, Danny. We appreciate your time. We took some notes. We'll have you back on during the season.
We all did.
We'll see if our notes
we all
match
did.
up. We'll see if our notes match up.
All right, fellas. Great catching up with you. We'll see you.